Construction companies are hiring those with college degrees into management tracks, while the old-timers in the field get sort of pushed aside until they retire or die. Welcome, I'm Carl Murawski. Now, I know a lot of people out there have no intention of ever getting into management, superintendent, or foreman tracks at all. They're happy where they're at. They're gonna work in that trade until they retire. And for you, I say good on you. This video is obviously not for you. But recently, I had an injury at work. And these are those moments that happen to you and you say, maybe it's time I get behind a desk somewhere. And, I've always talked about how your body is a finite resource in the trades, and it's really important to make sure that you take care of it while you're using it and you need it for your livelihood, but also to maybe look at what the last decade or so of your career is going to look like. There aren't a whole lot of guys who are in their 50s and 60s running 4-inch rigid conduit. I mean, they're out there, but they're kind of the minority. And the people I look up to most are the ones who have gotten to where they are by moving up those rungs of the ladder. And unfortunately, feels like for a lot of us now, that ladder is quite a few rungs shorter because there's this gate of a degree that, let's face it, most of us don't have. Coming out of high school, I had to face the harsh reality that I was not gonna go to college. And coming from a single parent household, my mother was a hairdresser, we didn't have the finances nor the know-how to get myself going in college. So I just went to work, and that's what you did. You had to do something, and I went down to the local mechanic, applied for a job down there washing cars and learning how to do oil changes, and I worked there for quite a while until I eventually became an electrician, a job that I've had till today. And it's a career that I wouldn't trade. I mean, I'm able to provide a nice life for my family, but it certainly required a little bit of breaking ceilings and changing employers to figure out that the end of my road wasn't there yet. I remember the first place I ever worked, I said, I want to get into being a foreman. That's what I think I want to do. I want to have a group of people who I can lead and run a project on my own. And I remember my boss at the time, the owner of the company, telling me, nah, that job doesn't really exist anymore. You're better off just staying here. And, we would do these small jobs and whatever. And I just wasn't happy with that. And I ended up moving employers and kind of running into the same thing where if that person wasn't giving me the answer that I wanted, I would seek it out elsewhere. And it took me changing companies quite a few times until I finally found one that I feel is top notch. The company that I'm with now, I have no plans of ever leaving. I've been there for 10 years now, and they're excellent. And now that I'm looking at the latter half of my career, this whole idea of degree versus non-degree comes to mind again. And I think the problem becomes when the degree becomes a gate instead of a tool. You change what kind of leaders are produced, you change the culture, and it can increase the resentment between field and management. Now, there's a very good reason why companies are choosing to hire this way, and I think it's important to understand why. The AGC 2025 Workforce Survey shows that 80% of firms had openings for salaried positions and 88% had openings for hourly craft positions. It also shows approximately 92% of firms reported difficulty filling both salaried and craft openings. So it makes sense that most companies are choosing whichever recruiting path is the most predictable. And campus recruiting is a very clean path. I know Turner Construction, probably the biggest in the industry, at least here in the States, they have a whole thing where they'll go to campuses and they'll find their people. It makes sense. You're getting people who are moldable. And as the whole construction industry has become more risk and paperwork heavy, I mean, I've talked about safety culture in a whole other video. It makes sense that we need office workers to handle this. So RFI, submittals, all the stuff that goes with compliance, those types of things need people who can do them. If you spend a lot of time in college, chances are you've dealt with these types of paperwork. And a college degree is a pretty easy screening tool. I mean, somebody who has a college degree, hopefully worked for it, you kind of know that they have a base level of knowledge to even get that degree, and companies see it as somebody who is already sort of qualified to do the job that they're going to be hired to do. The problem arises when that shortcut becomes policy and it becomes a locked gate to those of us without degrees. And the official guidance out there sort of nudges the market that way. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says that construction management professionals usually need a bachelor's degree. Being able to learn new things like how to manage your finances is crucial. And that's where this video's sponsor, Monarch, comes in handy. With my own personal job and with YouTube and with the house and all the things that we have going on, it's hard to see it in one place. And I did my best with my own dashboard on Excel, but it didn't work very well. And Monarch actually took a lot of that guesswork. They put it into one really nice looking dashboard that's accessible through mobile and on desktop. and they make it pretty easy. You can actually do budgeting within this, but you can also do really cool things like, let's say you want to plan for a vacation next year. It'll tell you how much you have to put aside every month to reach that goal of going on that vacation next year. And, you can do this yourself if you really wanted to try to figure it out, but it's really easy just to click it within Monarch and just have that sort of thing happen. It's also not some sort of enterprise level software that takes forever to understand. I mean, I don't need like 20 alerts going off every single day because something didn't match up or whatever. I don't need another job managing the software that's supposed to be managing my finances. It's also private and ad free. You're the customer, not the product. So there's no ads, no data selling, and it syncs with over 13,000 institutions for fast, secure setup. And if you share finances, it's couples ready, so you're looking at the same reality. Thanks to Monarch for partnering with me, and you can get 50% off your first year by clicking the link below or using code CARL50. This whole video is about climbing the ladder, finding more fulfillment at work, and making more money. And if you don't know how to tell that money what you want it to do and manage your finances, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. It's absolutely key, and Monarch really does make it a lot simpler. Thank you so much to Monarch for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. Now, here's where and I'm sure you get frustrated, and that is kids running around your job with iPads telling you that they don't know how to do your job, but you're doing it wrong because their book says so. I have no problem with people who understand the spec, who understand the code and how things are supposed to be put together, but when I have somebody who's never done my job telling me how to do it, it does get me pretty frustrated. I'll admit, there have been plenty of times that I've expressed that on site. Simply put, theory does not run a job. Okay, you can be an expert in CPM scheduling and have no idea what to do on a Monday morning when the delivery is late, 2 guys called out sick, and your deadline has been pushed up a couple of days. There's nothing in a book that tells you what, maybe there is something in a book. I don't know. I've never read that book. But either way, what do you do in that situation? Well, a lot of times the guys who have done it for a long time simply reach in their toolkit and adapt. And that's the day-to-day on a construction site. If you've never been on one before, it's adapting. The reality of credibility is where things start to fall apart, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video. A 25-year-old kid walking around the job site telling everybody what they're supposed to do because he's your boss simply doesn't have the credibility of somebody who's done it for a long time, and everybody trusts him because that's the guy who gets things done. And when you have these people with theoretical knowledge out there, well, you start to get mistakes, and simple mistakes that maybe the guy in the field, because he's resentful, isn't correcting you on. And mistakes get expensive. How expensive? Well, CII notes that rework costs on a typical project can run 2 to 20% of the contract amount. And I'm not saying that college grads cause rework. I'm just saying that leadership that's not grounded in field experience is what sets rework up to happen. A lot of safety risks also exist in the gap between what the plan says and what production demands. And if you don't know where you can push and pull that boundary, that's where things can get sketchy. If the person in charge doesn't understand the work at a fundamental field level, they can unintentionally push unsafe sequencing. And then, of course, the field gets blamed and there's a safety stand down, et cetera, et cetera. When the career ladder gets removed, this is where the real damage happens. And outside of a few people on YouTube who are talking about this kind of thing, I don't really hear it being discussed very much at all. Now, the guy who I respect the most, the guy who knew so much, it almost bordered on precognition, was a guy who I worked for up until a few years ago when he retired. And this guy started from the field as an apprentice and ended his career as the chief operations officer at an enormous electrical company. As construction companies seek those with degrees as the main path, well, for those of us who are internal, a few of the rungs from that ladder go missing. And when those with aspirations beyond the field start to see that, one of two things happens. They either disengage at work or they leave for greener pastures. It can make one feel like they're simply not worth training. And for a group of people who've been told that they're less than for their entire lives, this damage is real. There's a term for what's happening in our industry and a lot of others, and it's called credentialism. Randall Collins' work on the Credential Society argues that education often functions as a form of status sorting and access control, not just skill building. It's something that blue-collar people have understood for a long time, though for me, it took me actually researching this video to know that there was a name for it. A degree starts off as a useful signal, then it becomes a requirement, and before long, it's a barrier. And eventually, everybody needs it, whether it accurately predicts performance or not. But in construction, it's particularly bad because I feel like so much competence is built on experience alone. Now let's talk about the culture aspect of this, which is, I think, more important than a lot of companies realize. When you divide your workforce into management and labor, you create a status boundary that is almost impossible to cross. Now you have the office people who feel like they're responsible for outcomes but don't necessarily understand production, and you have the field side, which often feels disrespected because their experience does not equal opportunity. And then you get the worst kind of culture, and it exists in almost every company I've ever seen, and that is the field versus the office. And the people who I feel worse for are field level management. I'm talking foremen and supervisors, superintendents, people like that who are responsible for both the office and the field and making those two things dovetail together. I mean, these guys have to be organizers, coordinators, babysitters, psychologists, and they still have to make production happen. NCCER flat out says that there's a limited supply of qualified leaders and points to aging and turnover pressure as part of why superintendent hiring is especially difficult. So if the industry is already struggling to produce superintendents, why make that path any harder than it has to be? Now, I don't like to pose a problem without also offering a solution. So I think what we really need to have is a dual path to leadership with one accepted standard for competence. Because talent can come from either path, and just because I never had the opportunity to go to college doesn't mean that somebody who had that advantage shouldn't have access to leadership potential. But I think that if you have a construction management degree, it should also be a requirement that you spend some time in the field. And I'm not talking about a general walkthrough. I'm not talking about, job site meetings that are on site, anything like that. I'm talking about actually in the work, doing the work that you're going to be telling somebody else to do in the future. And I'm not saying that you got to do a full apprenticeship here, but you need to spend some time in the shit. You really do. You can earn a lot of credibility by working side by side with people and showing them that you're a hard worker and willing to roll your sleeves up to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Now, if you're coming from the field side and you're ambitious and you want to get into leadership, well, then I think there should be a bridge there as well. I think companies need to offer assistant super positions. They should offer education when it comes to learning Outlook and Excel and whatever, software you may use, Bluebeam or accounting software or estimating software, ways to train somebody up who's ambitious and wants to take advantage of it. And then some time in the office learning with support around you how the things are there, getting a taste for it. And maybe some people realize, you know what, the grass isn't always green on the other side. I'm going to stick with my field job, but thanks for the opportunity. One standard I think is really the key here, competence over credentials. And it doesn't matter where you came from. If you're competent, you could be taught and you're ambitious and you want to learn, why wouldn't any company want to take advantage of that? Now, I don't want to beat this point to death. Too late. But in a time where they're all telling us that, there's this labor crunch and we can't find enough people and whatever, I think that a really attractive way to make your company one that people will want to work for is to offer them sort of a pathway into leadership. Somebody who is ambitious can actually really make something of themselves if that's what they choose to do. I think it's important, especially as you get older. I mean, when I was 25, I was Superman. I would do everything. But now that I'm 45, I feel a lot differently. And again, the last third of somebody's career maybe could be spent using all of that experience that they've built up throughout the years to lead the next generation and teach them to be the next great construction workers. This is a changing industry, and I think it's going to have to change in order to survive.